Hey everyone, Mr. Alent here now, going over Chapter 9, Section 2. So we're going to be looking at area and circumference for circles. And then we're also in Section 2, we're going to be looking at the introduction to regular polygons and finding those. And then we'll see some more examples in a later video. But let's just look at circles for now. So with circles, what you have to remember is that there are two things that we really need to talk about for circles, and they're very much related. Going all the way across the circle through the center is what is called the diameter. Okay, so little d stands for diameter. Okay? And from just the center out to the edge is what we call the radius. All right, so basically, a radius is half the diameter. Two radiuses make up a diameter. Okay, that would be a radius and that would be a radius. So diameter is all the way across the center, radius, distance from center to edge of circle. And again, diameter and radius. Now radius is the one we use most often because it's the one that's in our area formula. The area for a circle is pi times the radius squared. Okay, pi is that kind of magical number that occurs naturally with circles. Pi is the ratio of the circumference of a circle to its radius, to its diameter. And it's this magic, and for all circles, that ratio of circumference to diameter is always 3.1415. The number you always think about when people ask you what's pi. But remember, it's actually the ratio of circumference to diameter. And so pi occurs naturally with our circles, which is why it's in those formulas, and it's part of that ratio. And the radius is right here. It's going to get squared. Now, one thing to note when you're doing an area, you do square the radius. Do not square the pi. That's a common error. Square the radius. After you've squared that, then multiply by pi. And use the pi button on your calculator, by the way. There is a really great pi button. You can see right there on these calculators that we use in our class anyway, these TI-30XS multi-views. They're a really good calculator, pretty inexpensive, and a pretty good little scientific calculator. They build tables, they don't do graphs, but that's okay. So there's a little pi button. So if you're up here working on something, just hit pi times whatever it is you're doing, and the pi's got the, I didn't like that. But pi is pi, or if I want to know the decimal, there it is, 3.14159, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so instead of putting in like 3.14 by hand, use the pi button. Okay. So, again, the R there stands for radius, and that's for finding area. And then for circumference. Now, circumference, it's really just perimeter. If you go back to what we talked about for the polygons, perimeter is distance around. For a circle, we call that circumference, but it's still the same idea. It's the distance around. How far is it around the circle, the edge of the circle? Area is how much space it fills or covers, and circumference is distance around. And there's really kind of two formulas. Circumference is 2 pi r, where again there's your radius, right? Or you can see pi times d. The reason those work, and either one works, is because again, a diameter is 2 radiuses, right? 2 radiuses is a diameter, okay? So they're really the same thing. 2 pi r is probably the more common one because, again, usually we try to get things in terms of r because r is what we need for area. All right, so let's see an example. So our first example here says find the area and circumference for this circle. And one thing we have to be careful of, again, is what are we looking at, right? We're looking at the diameter. This 16 shows going all the way across, so that means 16 is a diameter, which is okay if we're finding circumference. We can use diameter, but when we're finding area, we need r. So we might as well get r, right? R is half the 16, so it's 8. All right. So let's go ahead and do it. Let's get the area first. The area, and I always write the formula out. Area equals pi r squared, where r is 8. So pi times 8 squared. And so that'll give us a 64 pi. And then if we wanted to get the number here, and I'm putting a little or there, and I'll explain in a second, but then we do 64 times pi, right? Again, I use the pi button. All right, 64 times pi. Now it kicks back a 64 pi. That's because this calculator likes to simplify if it can, and keep it in the simplest form without having to round. This is called an exact number, and it's called in terms of pi. But if we do want the decimal, just remember you just go down here right above the enter, you press that double arrow, and it switches it to decimal. 201.1 if we round it to the 10th. So 201.1. Don't forget units. We're talking about square miles. Square miles. And I'm going to box in both answers. The reason I'm doing that, sometimes in our classes we like to ask you to round to the nearest tenth, in which case you would do this 201.1. You multiply with the pi button. But sometimes we say leave it in terms of pi, right? In terms of pi means don't multiply, just leave the pi symbol. 64 pi is actually a little bit cleaner looking than 201.1, right? So this one is in terms of pi, this one is round to the nearest tenth. So follow directions when you see those on assignments and things as far as what we're looking for. Okay, and then let's look at circumference. Circumference is pi times d. We can use either one. I mean, we would put it in terms of r, but we got the d right there. Might as well do that one. Pi times d, but the d was 16. And I kind of ran myself out of space here, but 16 pi miles, if we leave it in terms of pi, or again, if we get the decimal, 16 times pi, there's that 16 pi, but then hit the double arrow, 50.3 miles, it looks like. So again, in terms of pi, round to the nearest tenth. Follow the directions as far as which one they're wanting. This one didn't specify. Okay, notice area, right, square miles like always, but these ones, miles. These are singular units because, again, this is a distance, right? You travel so many miles. We're traveling around the edge of the circle for circumference, okay? All right. Let's look at the next example, example 2. Find the area and circumference. Okay, so this one, it looks like the radius is given. It's that 3x. Now, it's 3x, so it's kind of weird, but that's okay. It's not going to change how we're going to approach this, right? We're going to still start it all the same way. For area, we're going to do A equals pi r squared. And r just happens to be 3x right now. So we're going to square 3x. Well, remember, squaring means times it by itself. 3x times 3x is going to give us a 9x squared. We still have that pi there. And so what's kind of funny is that the pi always comes first when you are looking at the formula. But once you write it in terms of pi, you put the pi last, like we did 64 pi, 16 pi, 9x squared pi. So why, it's just a little bit cleaner looking this way. Why the formula always starts with pi, I don't know. But we always end up writing it this way, 9x squared pi. And this was inches squared. Now, I'm not going to go ahead and, if there's one where you have the variable in there, you're just going to leave it in terms of pi. Right? Leave it like this. Don't get the decimal, because then you have some decimal multiplying a variable, and that's just not very clean. Just leave it like this. That's good enough. If you have some variable still in your formula, leave it in terms of pi. Now, I know there's this need to want to solve for x right now, but we're not gonna. We're not solving for x. We just asked to find the area. Our radius was given in terms of x, so our area is going to have to be in terms of x. We would have to be told more information to be able to find more. We'd have to know what x is or representing or something like that, which we're not, so we're just going to stop there. Okay, for circumference, this time we have the r, so we are going to use the 2 pi r circumference, right? Pi d is what we used before, but let's use the 2 pi r this time. So circumference is 2 pi r. 2 times pi times 3x. All right, well, then what we would do is 2 times 3 is going to give us a 6. So we'll have a 6x pi inches. Again, leave the pi, put in your units, and we're done. Okay, so there's some circle stuff. I'm going to go ahead and end this here. Then we'll talk about the polygons in another video. So we'll just go ahead and just keep this with the circles. So there you go. There's our circle formulas.